Hello, this is Eric from Copyright Infringement Foodwishes.com with Puerto Rican style empanadas. Now these empanadas you're drooling at right now actually aren't mine. I stole the image online. I ate all my empanadas before I remembered to take a picture, but that doesn't matter. This is what they should look like when you're done. Okay, let's get started. Right here I have one diced up large green pepper and another diced up large onion and a couple of cloves of garlic. Right here I have about 3, but you can use as many cloves as you like. And personally I like my portion of veggies to be much higher than the average Puerto Rican, hence the large veggies. However, you can really use as much as you want. So just in case you've never minced a garlic clove before, I'm showing you my meticulous method. So first I crush the garlic using a knife blade as a flat surface. However, when you do this, you shouldn't use a paring knife. It is far too scary and small to hit. It moves around with the garlic too much. So please just use a chef's knife and don't be stubborn like I was. So get the inedible peel off, and we're going to make an incision from the top of the garlic clove, going down almost to the root. Notice I said almost. The cut should barely reach it and not go through. Basically stop at the point you would have cut off and thrown away anyway. Now we're going to make more cuts on the side of the garlic that is parallel to the direction of the garlic's clove's growth, if that makes sense. The garlic should be able to fan out at this point. By the way, I apologize for not shooting this from the other side. My hand is in the way, and I didn't realize this until after I stopped cutting. And to change the footage, I would have had to cut up more garlic than I needed, so I didn't. So once you make those cuts parallel to the growth, then you go ahead and chop 90 degrees out of phase from that to get nice square little garlic chunks. So rinse and repeat for the other cloves of garlic, but I'm going to cut that out of the video because it's boring. So now the cooking process is about to begin. Get a large pan and get it up to medium-high heat. To make this recipe more authentic, I shoved the Phillips screwdriver into the burner to keep it working. This burner goes out because the connections are loose. So I'm using a screwdriver to keep it forced into place. To make this more authentic, try to find a way to incorporate duct tape. Once things start heating up, add in some olive oil, nothing fancy, just cooking olive oil, no extra virgin. And you can see as I add the oil, I had the temperature too high. Your oil shouldn't start smoking. But anyway, accidents happen. So to try to fix this problem, I tried to add some veggies in as soon as possible, which in this case you start with onions and garlic, your aromatics. And unfortunately, although this fixed the problem, my onions got a little scorched. And you can see them jumping around in the oil, which they shouldn't be doing. So I'm going to let this cook for a while in the oil and make sure to stir it around so all the pieces of onion get a little bit of oil on them and coated so they all cook evenly. And you're going to cook this for a couple minutes until your onions turn translucent. Now I'll show you what translucent looks like. It looks like this. So now that they're translucent, you can see it by a little brown coloring and I can see through some of the pieces. I go ahead and add my green peppers. Give that a stir. Let it cook for a couple more minutes. It was at this point I was starting to feel a little suspicious of my screwdriver, because right when I added the green peppers, actually a couple minutes after I added the green peppers, my heat wasn't being maintained, and you'll definitely see that when I add the meat. So now you see that my green peppers are cooked and they're starting to be a little discolored. So this time around when I made the empanadas, I decided to do something fun in the pan, and I made this little well that I'm going to add the ground beef into. And this is so that when I turn the heat up higher, the ground beef is going to get more surface area in the center to brown, which is the hottest part of my pan, which is intended. So we want to brown a little bit, and then once a couple pieces get brown, then we're going to mix it all together and let it cook evenly from there. Now as an intuitive listener, you're going to wonder, why did I raise the heat? And it's going to be because when I add this ground beef, it's going to drop the temperature in the pan. And I want to maintain constant heat. So I raise the temperature, and then once that gets hot enough, I will drop it back down to its original level. So now that my ground beef is browned and my green peppers are cooked all the way through, I'm going to add in some spices. But as you can see, I'm holding onto that screwdriver for dear life because it's starting to betray me. The heat in the pan keeps dropping. So at this point I'm starting to get a little annoyed. I decide to press on, and I go ahead and add in my spices, which I used about 3 teaspoons of Badia's Complete Seasoning initially. And you're going to do this on a flavor basis. So once you add in all your ingredients and you have good baseline established, you're going to go back and you're going to taste your meat and make sure that it tastes good. And if there's anything missing of your initial ingredients, just add more. General rule I found for cooking is to always be conservative with your initial spicing. That way you can always go back later and make it perfect. But if you go ahead and add a big cup full of the Badia seasoning in the beginning, you're not going to be able to change that. You can always add, but you can't take out. So moving on, my screwdriver ultimately failed me, and I had to move to the smaller burner. It was just getting too tedious to deal with it. So I'm going ahead and adding 1 packet of sazon con culantro y achiote. Very important, has to have con culantro y achiote, or this is not legitimate. Alright, so now that we have our dry spices in, we're going to give it a stir, make sure everything's well incorporated, and take a little taste. Because from here on out, we're not going to add ingredients that really have salt in them. So it's important to taste for salt, make sure everything tastes right, and I thought it didn't, so I added another teaspoon of complete seasoning. So our next ingredient is bay leaves. I'm adding a couple, just about a handful. If I was Rain Man, I could tell you how many leaves are here. I would say like 6 or 7. Toss those in, and remember to pluck those bay leaves out when you're done cooking. Nobody wants to eat a leaf. I want you to see past the steam rising from the pan and see that nice brown fond that's stuck to the bottom of the pan. It's basically a little bit of meat that's caramelized on the bottom, and that's super delicious. And there's a way of getting that off and getting it perfectly incorporated into your mixture, and that's by putting in a little bit of liquid to that hot pan. And for me, I used the juices from the green olive container. And these aren't just any green olives, they're Manzanilla olives. They're basically green olives with pimento pepper stuffed in the center of them. So this time around, if we look through the steam from the pan, you can see that all that fond is gone. And is it tomato time? Yeah, it's tomato time. So we're going to add 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. So right after you add that tomato sauce, it's incorporated into your mixture. And this isn't actually the consistency you want it once it's incorporated into the mixture. You actually want it a little thicker than this. You want to drive off the liquid from the tomato sauce a bit. And it's because when you go to stuff your empanadas, they're going to be a little soupy in the center. And some people dig that. Actually, Venezuelan style empanadas are quite soupy in the center. At least the ones I've had. So getting back to the subject at hand, now I'm adding about 3 teaspoons of recaito. I'm using the frozen kind because it lasts longer in the freezer than it would on the shelf. I also added about 2 or 3 cups of water. The reason for this is that I'm going to let this simmer on the stovetop uncovered for about an hour or longer, depends when I remember to take it off. So now we're moving on to the main event. You're going to need your empanada shells, you're going to need some mozzarella cheese, a little bowl with water in it, and we're also going to need your picadillo meat that you made. So before I even start thinking about making an empanada, I always take the little wax paper from the container and I put it down so that the empanada doesn't stick to the one that I made before it. So place your empanada dough on a clean surface, wet your fingertips, and spread it around the outer rim of the empanada dough. After you've done this step, go ahead and take however much meat you want to put in your empanadas, place it in the center, and then grab a little handful of mozzarella cheese and place that alongside of it, and then it's folding time. So when I fold these up, it's very important to grab it from a side and roll around. If you try to pull directly up, you might tear the dough. And I always lift the dough up into the air, because if you try to fold these over on that flat surface, some of the juices from the meat is going to pour over. So once you've met that in the middle and the cohesion of the water keeps the empanada dough together, you're going to use that fork to crimp the outer edges of the empanada. This is what we're using as a seal. So pay close attention to how I pick up my empanadas. If you don't pick them up like this, you're going to stretch them out. So make sure you pick them up specifically like I am right here. I'm not going to try to explain it with words, just look at it with your eyes. Once you're done with your empanada, place it on that wax paper like I showed you before, and that way your empanada is not going to stick to each other. So it's frying time. Get about 1 inch of canola or vegetable oil into a large frying pan, place your empanadas down, and cook them until they look like this. You should be about medium-high heat, and so long as you're about medium to medium-high heat and they get this coloration, they'll be done. So don't go by time, just go by look and temperature, If they look like this and you are at medium or medium high heat, then you know they're ready. If you have the temperature too low, then your empanadas are going to be really oily and kind of disgusting. And if you have your temperature too high, then when they look like this, your empanadas will be doughy in the center, and that's unwanted. Also, as a rule of frying, whenever you place something in the oil, remember to place it down starting from the closest point to you, and then let it go away from you. This is so that oil doesn't splash at you. So don't do it like the way Kaylin just did in the video. So for redundancy, you're going to place these down, let them cook on one side, and when they look like this, flip them, and let them cook until that side looks exactly the same. So this is what my finished empanadas look like, at least supposedly, and I hope yours do too. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and you've enjoyed cooking with me. And if you really enjoyed cooking with me, you can come visit me